I would like to welcome you all for the last juxtaposition session in 2023 here at the Berlin University of the Arts. Our bi-weekly get-together and meeting of minds that think across many different disciplines and that kind of think and act across them. And tonight's lecture is about a nomadic practice based on communication and communicating and dealing within, as our guest said, a highly contradictory art system that we're kind of all part of. So, María-Inés Plaza Lazo, I'm very happy that you're here. I was thinking on the way here when we met for the first time and how we met. Try again. It's very powerful. Again. So I was the cliffhanger. When did we meet? How did we meet? So I think it must have been around 2017 that I first heard of you and the Arts of the Working Class. And I believe it must have been shortly after that we met. And I'm not sure if it was through Matilda or someone else. Do you recall? Okay, let's say it's Matilda Krischowski, who was also a guest here as part of the Juxtaposition series. Actually, in the very beginning, she is an OG from the first semester of Juxtaposition, a dear friend of both of us and a curator. So let's say in that realm, we actually then met, and I was very intrigued by you and your work, and eventually we also collaborated a couple of years ago for a project I did or inspired by and in Venice at the opening of the Art Biennale, where we took over a kiosk where you presented Art of the Working Class. But this is our story. Now back to you. You are an art historian by training, an editor and a curator, and together with Paul Sochacki, who is an artist, you founded Arts of the Working Class, of which you are a publisher, as a co-founder and publisher, and you live, as you say, between Berlin and the streets of the world, many different places. In Arts of the Working Class, I guess most of you have come across Arts of the Working Class living in Berlin, also in other cities, is a bi-monthly bilingual street newspaper for the arts and society, wealth and poverty, and is made, sold and directed by and for the people. So the vendors that sell these newspapers to you keep 100% of the revenues. And it's also, as I said, multilingual, so many different languages are actually appearing in Arts of the Working Class. So I'm super thrilled that you followed my invitation, that you're here with us, and that you kind of share your work and your approach and your world with us. So please, a warm applause for María-Inés.
Cool, thanks. My mic works. Great. Good evening, everyone.
I'll put this on here.
Yes, please. Danke, Lukas. Yeah, and thank you for the brief introduction. I have two brief questions to you at the beginning of this short sesh. Is who has read Arts of the Working Class in the past? 1, 2, 3, 4. Okay, it's like a third. Yes, sorry for the people joining online that cannot be part of this, or like will not be part of this conversation, but hopefully it's fruitful also in this hybrid form. I have decided to have these images accompanying me tonight as kind of a non-verbal presence of my colleague, dear colleague, and ally and co-founder of the street newspaper Arts of the Working Class, Paul Sochacki, who is an artist himself and whose brilliant gaze can also hold on together, or to hold on to the vocabulary of this series, to juxtapose all the tensions that you will experience or you are already experiencing in the so-called art world. Since Lukas already gave a brief definition to what Arts of the Working Class is, and also for you, you are... yeah, thank you. You might be holding in your hands the current issue of Arts of the Working Class. Yeah, is the camera right? Yeah? Great. You will be this will be circulating among you. I'm tired of moving stacks from one place to another, so please excuse me, I didn't bring enough. I didn't know how many of you will be here, but anyways. Since the definition of our newspaper was already told by Lukas, I will give you a more lexical introduction to the street newspaper that we have delivered to the publishing house Thick Press, which is done with among a social worker and graphic designers. And this is what we formulated. Street newspapers, or street papers, are newspapers or magazines sold by homeless or poor individuals and produced mainly to support those populations. Most such newspapers primarily provide coverage about homelessness and poverty-related issues and seeks to strengthen social networks within homeless communities. End of quote, by the way. This is how the definition of a street newspaper starts in Wikipedia. To activists, artists, and writers, this is rather a minimizing explanation of street newspapers' social, political, and creative potentiality. Thus, what street newspapers meant in the late 19th and early 20th centuries is rather a form of circulation. What they meant in the 1980s, when they started to multiply to the cities as a form of throwing pennies to those affected by neoliberal rise of accumulation of a speculative market owned by a ruling class and not of a mutual aid, is being reversed by Arts of the Working Class, or AWC, as I will also sometimes refer to. So AWC, the multilingual street newspaper for art and society, wealth and poverty, searches for the softness that disrupts borders and makes a space for imagining territories of kinship, disobedience as a way of negotiation, and trust as the only element to which to hold on to in a rapidly changing global society. In doing so, it seeks to collaborate with established structures that cover a spectrum of society different from other street newspapers. In other words, from working class representative and non-representative organizations to the ruling class temples, such as museums, universities, art academies, institutional and governmental structures. What makes this possible is the growing disconnect between working people's realities and the mindset and interest of the ruling class. Street newspapers are sold mainly by homeless individuals, but the newspaper vary in how much content is submitted. I'm just gonna reverse the images. I don't know why it's not. Voila. So again. While some papers are written and published mainly by homeless or unemployed contributors, others have a professional staff and attempt to emulate mainstream publications. These differences have caused controversy among street newspapers and other publishers over what type of material should be covered and to what extent the homeless should participate in writing and production. One of the most known street newspapers in the world, The Big Issue, from London, has been a focus of this controversy due to its focus on attracting a large readership through coverage of mainstream issues and popular culture, whereas other newspapers emphasize homeless advocacy and social issues and earn less of a profit. Art of the Working Class is not exempt from this kind of controversies, but consciously so. So, consciously so, I would like to jump immediately or juxtapose my upbringing to the definition of what we have achieved with Art of the Working Class on the side of how poverty is being not only used as a currency, but also how it's being indulged, ignored, or sometimes also celebrated. And when telling you this, I am also aware of the implications and ambivalences of these words. But since Berlin is not my home, and I have been in Germany for the last 16 years as an expat, that means a privileged person that had a middle-class upbringing in Ecuador and had the chance to learn different languages, came to Germany, but realized immediately that those privileges turned completely irrelevant to the currencies, or at least 16 years ago, differently than today, differently to access what we, well, I will dare to say in this room, dare to, or want to have, and that is the pleasure and joy to contribute to intellectual research, academic research, and social pleasure. So, in the year 19, I went to start already too far away, but flash forward to 2017, I arrived to Berlin. My first migration is to Munich, where I studied art history, Theaterwissenschaft, science theory, and sciences of performing arts, and philosophy. I understood that everything that I had learned within the academic realm was not helpful at all for me to understand the world or how to implement this knowledge to the struggle of social against social injustices. Or back then was a completely different jargon, and that is a less, let's say, a less anti-colonial vocabulary as we have today, but more, and that is pre-2015, but also on the verge of the migration crisis in Europe, is how do we understand each other as migrant bodies? And migrant bodies in a highly discriminating society as the German one specifically. So, very provocative thing to say, and I would love to debate on this, maybe not tonight, but you're always welcome to have a conversation with me on this. 2017, I arrived to Berlin, and I had already 4 years had a prototype for what Arts of the Working Class is today, and that was an online platform for the city of Munich called Reflector M, which was, we had a maybe difficult but also challenging policy, editing policy, and that is sometimes text would have proofreading, sometimes not. So we would write, or I would invite migrants and expats and everybody in between to write not in their native language, but write in their language of choice, and try to understand the verge between what is to come across or try to mediate the an artwork or a feedback or a point of critique in a language that it's still not not their own, and that is already challenging the parameters in which there is a so-called international art English that allows just a very, very specific way of addressing concerns or desires. Reflector M was therefore a way of saying there is a precarious way in which we have to deal with the lack of job vacancies, which is a job vacancy that, or the lack of job vacancies within the art and cultural fields that is more insane today. But also to understand that there are disruptions and a non-conformist way to approach the coined, or like terms that are constantly being coined as trendsetters, and understand what are we really looking at when talking or writing about art. So arriving to Berlin, I don't have a job, I don't have any source of income, but I have all the wishes of the world to engage in a highly vibrant cultural society as it is the one in Berlin. Are you getting it higher? No.
What?
No, this is not getting higher. The volume? No. Okay. Okay, great. So I sit in the U-Bahn and I see a beautiful couple in the most worrying state, physical and mental state, asking for money and selling the local street newspaper, which I guess still exists, with a limited print run called Mods. Do you know Mods? Yeah, some of you might know it, some not. Mods is the eldest street newspaper that Berlin has, started in the 90s, and also very telling after the wall came down. The rise of homelessness and poverty rises in the cities too. So Mods would have a series of texts and interviews and reviews on text on drug abuse, addiction of all sorts, how to get a hold on the Stadtmission, how to get a hold on a warm and dry place to sleep, etc. And what I wondered is how I bought one for €2, and I wondered how the reality that was depicted in the street newspaper had anything to do with these two people that seemed to be just had a really long weekend in Berghain. And for some reason, I felt immediately and deeply connected to the people that were in front of me. I thought that the same precarity is that the one that was that we were both confronting, and the danger of being isolated in society, also through to the politics of exclusion and inclusion that were highly debated and are still increasingly done as such in a lascive and highly polarizing way, back then was already striking for me. So I would take this copy to the meeting I was about to have with Paul Sochacki, whose paintings you should really look up. This is certainly not of his, but his pastel and seemingly innocent depictions of myth or legend or fable-like situations have always like how, I don't know how to say it in English, but eine hinterhältige Haltung. So you would feel that these pastel colors would stab you from the back with an awful truth. And it was the beginning of a conversation that would disembogue on arts of the working class, because what was the situation at that point was I would have a tiny job as a curator, and I should curate his show, but Paul is someone that paints all his paintings one day before the opening. So I suggested to make a publication where we can deal with things that would matter to us. So based on this proposal that I did to him, it's like, it's hard to curate if I don't see your paintings. How about having something else in common? And this something else was an archive of Paul that inherited posters from the 70s, from all over the world, of former socialist parties that don't exist anymore. And I told him, why don't we do a special edition for MOTS, the street newspaper, and try to talk about the in-between realities that are between us and the extreme poverty that we experience on the streets, and those who are affected by it the most. So he said, yeah, great idea, why don't we call this issue Art and Critique of the Working Class? To which my first reaction was, well, that's a bit cynical. The cynicism that I found was, if critique is something that can only be produced based on the tools that you have, and mostly you get them at the academic, through an academic preparation, and if art and critique are still connected together in an academic way, who are you inviting to be part of or feel addressed to, and how can a working class allow itself to have a representative that comes from, let's say, bourgeois manner of speaking? And he said, well, don't you see there is a certain kind of implosion there in the way how we live this ideological attempt to understand social struggle and the definition of art as a socially active and socially conscious, politically conscious practice that is just still responding to the logics of a neoliberal free market. We decided to call it Arts of the Working Class because that would allow us to enlarge the question and maybe reduce the contradiction. In the juxtaposition of the words arts of the working class, we raise rather a question that it remains plural, because if art should belong to everyone, then where do you find it? And if art belongs to, or if the working class can define the arts beyond the cultural hierarchy in which we predominantly still live and cohabit, how does it look like? So just to maybe refrain or start from the beginning, the juxtaposition of three different typographies make the title and the typography that it's almost like a logo for this street newspaper. That is typography from the 19th century, from a artisan's workshop, from Disney, and something that we would find immediately in an open source typography list, or font list. So we already are juxtaposing three logics of operation, or three logics of work, or the aesthetics of the work. One is the open office, and then there are some kind of, let's say, standards of how we understand, how we read culture through Arial, Helvetica, Georgia, Calibri, and Times New Roman, but also how the romantic idea of the artist that works in his or her or their workshop is just so far away from the realities today, and the Disneyfication of the world through ethno-nationalism, forms of hyper-consumerist ways of depicting oneself, or the urge of singularization through social media, and still predominantly happening in the art institutions. Art schools are sadly also not free, are not exempt from that extractivist logic. Please let us discuss about this if we have time. How are we in time?
Good, I would say another 15 minutes.
Another 15 minutes? Okay, so it's hard to start from the beginning and not wear you down with some couple of hours that we don't have. So I have also fast forward to 2022. And I would like to not show you, I would love to have showed you the first issue of Arts of the Working Class that we published back then, with the title, A City is a stateless mind. And stateless was played with the lack of accountability that we have for minorities to be also represented by the cities on the scale that it could feel balanced, or would have also prevented the polarization and the racial profiling that we are seeing now in the city of Berlin, but also a city as a stateless mind, as a city like Berlin. It was of course, the first issue was important to say. The first issue was dedicated to Berlin as a city of people that come from all over the world and remain stateless. Through political pressure, war distress, and forceful migration, but also for those who escaped themselves from their own national borders. Fast forward to weapons of choice. The issue here was one of five of a year that we titled Loops of Power. And loops of power, like all other 4 years that we operated, we do it in an annual program, since we are a tiny group. Currently we are 5 members in our team, and we do everything together to understand what are the forms of political pressure that we have to look forward or use in a productive way for everyone, but also the loops of power in which people remain caught. So kindness and destruction was one of these dichotomic pairings that we chose for that year. And something that we do and we're most enjoy doing is having a cover page that doesn't allow the readers to decipher exactly or immediately what this is about, but would propel different reflections with a headline and an artwork, or several ones, that would invite for moments of pause and reflection. So the so-called meme or headline of this cover is "Ethical enrichment makes the atomized ego glow," and it's paired with an artwork by the Brazilian artist Jonatas de Andrade, who has a certain kind of visual lexicon for, let's say, a Creole and also anti-racist vocabulary that has been growing on the streets of Brazil. Though ethical enrichment comes as a point of critique that we would like to do, and that is, if we belong to somewhere, for which reason or which attempt do we seek for representation, and what happens with our own behavior toward others in the way of how we are clustering our own practice or our own points of view in a climate of polarization. So, ethical enrichment can lead to kindness, but it can lead to destruction. That's the baseline. And the atomized ego can be an ugly, evil depiction of those who prefer to authoritarianly pretend to know better, but it would also lead to a certain form of moral superiority that also liberation groups and activist groups tend to also presume. These are the dangers of an identitarian language and identity politics. This issue was all about it. The weapons of choice, meaning the verbal use of that power. And what we do, as we do with every other issue, is that we curate the advertisement according to the research and contributions that we have. So you could see that here the only source of income that we get, something that I forgot to mention, is that from the current print run of over 70,000 copies that we produce every 2 months, everything is kept by the vendors, and that we do a minimum, like a tiny bit of requests and orders online. That's actually only sustains itself because the costs are immense. But our main source of income are the media partnerships with institutions and the advertisement that we choose regardless of, or scratch that, or due to the ambivalences that many of these companies have. So you can see here an advertisement by the Museum for Contemporary Art in Bolzano, in north of Italy, and the exhibition Kingdom of the Ill. And we consider this to be connected pretty much with our bi-monthly call for vendors to feel invited by Arts of the Working Class to do whatever they want with the paper, and also to announce where are our current pickup stations that you can see here below. There are only 8 pickup stations mentioned. Meanwhile, there are 3 or 4 times more. Arts of the Working Class started as a multilingual project and remains as such. As you can see here, that we decided to, in this spread, to do it according with colors, and the letters of workers that we have here are addressed to completely different topics. So the letters of workers is mocking or alluding to, referring to the letters of readers from newspapers, but this is an invitation for everyone to speak out or use our platform to whatever it's important for art workers to we are a multilingual team. That means we are in the capacity to edit and commission and edit everything that is being pitched to our newspaper in English, Polish, German, Russian, French, Turkish, and Italian at the moment. But there are, of course, every other language of the authors that are willing to write in the language of their preferences. As for example, okay, this is also predominantly in Turkish, English, and German, and I'll tell you why in a minute. You can see here that artworks in this issue is a section that we also diligently take care of, and that is that in spite of this paper being addressed to political and social urgencies, that we take our time to let artworks communicate and dialogue with the text in their own way. So for this, we write texts in the most traditional way, traditional and in the sense of the School of Art Criticism, that is, yes, very European, but at the same time that allows us to keep certain threads connected together, that any other method would allow us to do so for now. So we decide to call them reviews or profiles. That's presumably the only format that connects us to any other art magazine around. So this is the work of Adjonatas Andrade, Frédéric Brully-Boabré, and Noor Shantou, who worked also with Palestinian women in refugee camps. The work of Imane Jacqueline Brown, as well as Marcel Hilber, were also contributions and this would be important for me to jump back to what I was telling you about the juxtaposition between advertisement and contributions, is that we also enjoy and seek for media partnerships that allow us for a paid research and exchanges with institutions, festival biennials, any other form of cultural funds to stage also the collaborations with artists. Every issue has its chapters, and until this year we have managed 4 per issue, and we count with the collaboration with associate editors, so not only our perspectives remain the, let's say, the axis of reflection. But for this issue, and I think this is one of my favorite ones, and totally biased, because it brings together so many good things that we have pursued, and it's one of the peaks of what we try to convey, and that is tensions and disruption in a way that it not only creates a tension, but also creates some urgent reflection upon the existing structures. So when we bleed the same, or as I will show you here, sorry, I have to jump. You will see here, hast du dir deinen Alltag oder hat dich deinen Alltag gemacht? Has your daily life made you, or do you make your own daily life or schedule is connected to, I'm just gonna, oh, I can't? Okay, whatever. Connected to a project that we did with the Kunsthalle Vienna. They invited us as Arts of the Working Class, as many other publications, contributors and partners to every issue, to be part of an exhibition. Because, and thankfully many see what we also try to attempt on another level, as to create the awareness of Arts of the Working Classes issues as Gesamtkunstwerken. But what we did was, instead of taking the money of the institution and run and do whatever we please with it and the contributors and allies, we decided to give this money forward to citizens of the city of Vienna who are living in the former Red Vienna districts, where the socialist buildings such as Karl Marx Hof or Washington Hof were built for a city that was not only allowing social housing to be part of a political reality, but also something that still remains as such, the corners of Red Vienna. Vienna juxtaposed between this past and still a very monarchic infrastructure allows for these contradictions to happen, in which we hoisted flags with the favorite sentences of songs that citizens or inhabitants of these buildings would choose in a form of a prize, form of a call that we did. So we would give 500 euros to the people that would like to participate, and that would be selected for this flags to be produced with images and the sentences chosen, which of which we asked two things. The first was, what is the song? What is the song that you hear? What is your favorite song when you hear while you're working? And what is the reason? Or the song that you hear when you are not working, and what is the reason? So the dichotomies, and also the unfortunate and fortunate at the same time connection between free time and labor time is here also embedded. And we decided to create it. It's upside down, I have to warn. It's because until last year, we managed to have issues that would have two covers. One that would be in English, and the other in the language in which we would choose a very specific city in which we would participate. And you wonder, what has Turkish with Vienna? But one of the biggest diasporas speak Turkish language, so we decided to use this, and also go to the city of Istanbul with the paper and let it circulate there, beyond also the tactics and logics of distribution that are first and foremost possible in a city that is multilingual and highly diverse, such as Berlin. I don't want to draw any comparisons, but I would say that the dynamics of the paper in its city is a bit different. I would conclude in the last 5 minutes to guide you briefly through the last issue, that is also the ones that you might be holding in your hands, and that is the issues on unions. That my colleagues Amelie Jakubek and Dalia Maini have wonderfully edited. And you see the headline currently, "Sorry, insufficient funds, goodbye, goodbye," is already going away from this, or like seemingly going away from the title, which is unions, but that goes into different directions, such as the directions that, or the tension that we try to hold between these two paintings, one by Semyon Trikov and, excuse me, and Heinz Hamiach. Okay, whatever. This issue was possible in collaboration with the Kunstmuseum Stuttgart, in particular by the invitation from Anne Wied, curator of the Kunstmuseum, former curator. We ended up doing exactly the same as we did in Vienna, is enlarging the question why a street newspaper is being invited to collaborate in an exhibition format or exhibition context. Yeah, a salute to the 7 million people in sick leave. What we have achieved until now is also to understand that the juxtaposition and tensions that we create between simple language and the academic language that we take care of remains also alive, since we have the experience that both are necessary. Sorry. But just to remain on the cover and the back cover, you would see that it's already communicating from front to back, and that is that the paper starts to see the crumbling, or like experience the crumbling of a more lax economy or exchange of currencies within the cultural realm, namely because it tends to be assumed that advertising with arts of the working class would immediately mean to take a political stand in the current political climate, which is true, but also not entirely true. Then what we want is to have both the conversations that seem to be impossible and necessary, and the ones that are necessary are happening as we speak. Yes. Whilst the painting by Heinz Heimisch is from the exhibition at the Kunstmuseum Stuttgart called Zieh dir die Menschen an, Look at the People, the new objectivity during the Weimar Republic, is showing an act of what sculpturally seemingly scared person is still having their eyes open to what might come, namely on the year 1931, just 2 years before the occupation of power of the Nazi Party, and The Shepherd's Daughter from 1948 by Chuikov, a Jewish Russian painter, of which we wouldn't necessarily inscribe immediately a form of depiction or iconization of the current struggle of Palestinians or pro-Palestinians or people solidary with to Palestinians, but rather a symbol of that lack of possibility to express solidarity in spite of ambivalences. And with that said, for now, I would leave you with this, and thank you for your attention, and I hope you ask me a few questions.
Thank you so much, Maria. As usual, the deal, I'll start with a few questions. And I'll come with a very basic one. You explained to us the title. Let's start again with the nomen est omen. And you explained why it's not art and critique of the working class. But I do need another explanation why it's called art of the working class. Is it in a sense of that the artists, who are in usually very precarious states, are the new working class? Or could you elaborate once again in simple terms, simple language, why the title?
Yes. May I read you something? I promise this will be short. For thick press, for the lexicon, I also drafted with my colleagues a paragraph that we hope it's clear enough. So I tend to get lost in this question because it comes all the time, and we try to not always respond with the same words, not remain on the same, but there are many things that come together. So I will read you this out loud, and that is, questions of class are as relevant since the French Revolution, while still bourgeois representations rule dominant aesthetics. For example, during the Weimar period in Germany, artists portrayed workers but did not refer themselves as workers, nor did they represent themselves as part of a working class. Up until today, the production of cultural goods is often regarded as an artful practice in itself, something sublime and removed from the pressure of everyday course. This narrative mainly benefits the production of artistic goods, the artworks that in the art market are elevated from everyday objects, and therefore their production process must be sublime too, and not be seen as ordinary work. This forces many artists and curators into a double life, where they strictly divide their artist persona from their labor identity. In other words, the other work of the artist and curator becomes a branding to their artistic and curatorial work, becomes therefore incorporated into the artistic and curatorial practice, and has to follow its rules. Even though artistic and curatorial work has diversified in many ways, the stereotype of the sublime artist lingers on, while endless numbers of cultural workers continue existing in an invisibilized way in a non-unified, deregulated cultural field. And with cultural workers, I mean janitors, secretaries, volunteers, and so on. So, for AWC, when it comes to representation and self-representation of workers, and therefore of homeless people, too, we have to think of these as two different categories. Interdependent labor has a problem with representation because the given frames and infrastructures rarely allow for the less glamorous practices to unfold their potential. We're not online anymore. Yes? Okay, great.
Do you still need the picture?
No. Are you with me? Yeah? Okay, great.
Okay, I mean, actually, also I love titles that are ambiguous, and you know that's you can give a new interpretation or definition of it at any given point. Then I was wondering, when you came up with this idea, and I was amazed to hear 70,000 is the print run.
Currently 73,000.
Incredible. I mean, I've been in publishing for like 2 decades, but that's an absurd number for a medium that's basically dying, printed press. But who's the audience? Like, obviously it's a street newspaper, but have you ever been able to kind of research or find out who you actually cater to?
So we like to say, or specifically I like to say, we don't track readers. So to read this is the most safe thing to do. So we're not tracking who you are, what you like, how much time you need for an essay. if you jump or not, if your data is relevant to us. So we would say that vendors say that's predominantly young, predominantly female or femme, predominantly multilingual. It says a lot about who is writing this, but it's not our quote-unquote target group. We're not a homogeneous group. We're very heterogeneous in that sense. So I'd be interested in, I would say everyone, or basically the ones who were sitting with me when I bought mods for the first time. Grandfather that might buy this for his granddaughter on his way back to Bremen, or someone that is coming to visit for the first time, coming from Uruguay or Kazakhstan. So there is the notion of an internationalist understanding of workers, or a working class that cannot be defined as a homogeneous, but rather heterogeneous form, and therefore the readership would be that. And of course, within this readership are the vendors, which I maybe 45 minutes ago I tried to say that I don't think that the only topics that are relevant in a street newspaper are addiction and extreme poverty, but also forms of joy that can be found only through artistic practice. My humble opinion that what artistic practices can give. And that also, hopefully resembles how we see this as an object of aesthetic pleasure. Yeah.
And this comes along with, obviously, questions you spoke of inclusiveness and exclusiveness and accessibility also. In these different languages, I guess there's a pro and con in both directions. Oh, sorry, can you hear me? Yes, good. You spoke of, this is much better. You spoke of inclusiveness and exclusiveness of various systems, in particular with the street newspaper, which is very accessible, yet the content is too, because it's multilingual, but I guess it's a double-sided, a sword with two sides, that there's another, like I'm wondering about the topic of accessibility. The topics you're discussing, let's say, demand a certain intellectual preparation.
Yes, absolutely, and at the same time not. There are two anecdotes that we like to tell every time, because it's still the most truthful notion of how we engage also to the arts, and that is both Paul and I and a former editor and publisher of the paper, Alina Kolar, we would all three always speak about our relation to art in the moment, the pristine moment that we understood, okay, I want to do this and nothing else, and be related to the arts. And that was, there are three experiences that we shared, and they were all three on the street. It was for Alina, it was an opera singer on the street. For me, it was a book that I read while I was waiting for my mom to come back from the ATM or from the bank. And for Paul, was something that he was looking while he was having a stroll. So I think there is beauty in that. It doesn't need to be part of the cuspid of intellectual research or activity, as we can see it here in this room. But nevertheless, I think this is also encouraging. With a second anecdote that a friend told me, a curator who has to work and juggles between different works, and she said, well, if I don't understand Turkish, then I could also go to a friend that can speak Turkish, and it's the same with the academic and theoretical language. If I don't get it, maybe I can ask a sister, a brother, a neighbor to help me with it. And so it turns not into a silo experience to read, as to gain or own that knowledge that is being shared with you, but also to reshare it or share it or put it in a way that it's turns into a social practice.
And a tool for communication, literally.
Yes, and more specifically as a social practice, because that would allow a dialogue that we are also lacking. As the print media is dying, it's also the habit of reading. And reading as a social practice, and not only to scroll down and read the 5 minutes text and rush to the next text.
True. I have one more question before it's for you guys. Since this series here is a lot about collaboration, all the artists they tend to work in not only many different disciplines, have very different working realities, but also working with very different people together. So can you share some experiences, some cheat codes, some tricks or failures of collaboration? Because this is a huge collaborative effort.
Yeah.
The ups and downs.
The failures is a never-ending list. Happily, successes as well. Ja. Es ist eine totale Verausgabung, muss ich sagen. How do you say? Das ist einfach Verausgabung. It's self-exploitative. I have to say, I have to be very honest with you. It's self-exploitative to the extent that everybody needs a conversation these days. Everybody needs to feel not only understood, but also a certain form of empathy that it's very. It also goes beyond the relationship between author and editor, which is also already a very picky one, a very sensitive one too.
Similar to the curator and the artist, by the way.
Yes, yes. But as long as egos are playing a role, it's always catastrophic. We tend to try to put that in the back, but this is always a trial and error. We have faced up until now friends or colleagues that we trust that need a period not to talk to us anymore, because we tend to be very rigorous in the editing process. But that is also something very relative. There is a certain rigorosity that might be also part of a profession, a certain kind of category that we also very much cherish. This is not only dilettantism. This is not only doing and opening up for horizontality. Horizontality is necessary through intersectional, heterogeneous forms of labor and joy. So this is sometimes misunderstood as something that it's purely idealistic, which is not. It's very pragmatic. We're very pragmatic in many ways. And the third would be also the constant illusion that we have money. We need money. So if you know if someone can give me $250,000, let me know. Yes. So the amount of the print run is serious and it's high. It's incredibly expensive. But there are many people that live from this or have built a life in the last 5 years out of the sales of Arts of the Working Class. So we are responsible for that too.
Great. So now to you guys. First question over there.
Hello.
I'll repeat it again, as you know, for the online audience.
I'm really interested in a basic infrastructure for this newspaper to exist, and if it would be possible to have the Arts of the Working Class in Ecuador, for example.
So I have to repeat this for the online audience because of sound. The question was regarding the basic infrastructure for Arts of the Working Class. and if that would, for example, be possible in Ecuador too.
Yes, thank you so much for the question. It touches upon my most fervent dream, and that is to bring Arts of the Working Class to a stable circulation to Ecuador, where I come from. So that needs people that are in place. We cannot do it here. We do not monitor anything, but rather is based on trust, meaning our current basic structure is 2 publishers, a manager, Verwaltung, she's taking care of accountants. We have external Steuerberaterin and an external accountant. We have the publisher Paul. As a publisher, it takes care of the distribution, meaning he takes care of all the pickup stations, and we have since 2 years the storage outside of Berlin, because it's lots of paper we don't want to throw away. So some, like from 5 to 10 stacks that is from issue 5, we put it somewhere. So there are people in the storage to which we have to pay to take care of this. There are 2 editors, one taking care of online procedures and one taking care of print, who takes care of associate editors, and who again take care also with us contributors. Contributors are commissions, but also pitches, meaning everyone that writes Arts of the Working Class, if they're patient enough, we can take care of seeing if there is a potential of publishing their pieces. There is an in-house graphic designer that works with us once a week, and there is a pool of 3 to 4 different designers that take care of the layout every 2 months. And I take care of potential advertisement, media partners, donors, partners in general, and as a senior editor in this regard, I also I'm involved in every single process. Yeah, that's our structure, and ideally this could be spectral in every city. We always tell for people that tell us you should come to Barcelona or you should come to Puerto Rico, it's like, please take it. The invitation is sometimes intimidating or just overwhelming because it's just endless work. Yeah.
Yes. Also 1, 2, 3, I saw all of you. You go.
How accessible is the language that you're writing? The type of language, could like a 15-year-old read it and still understand it, or do you have to be like an academic, or how accessible is it?
So a question for the online: how accessible is the language used in Arts of the Working Class? Could the question a 15-year-old read it, or that was kind of along the line of my question: is an academic background needed to like understand the texts?
Thank you for your question. It's the majority of our content, of our contributions, is challenging. That doesn't mean that it's purely academic, nor something else. It's just like a lot of people think very difficultly to understand, and we also we try to edit it also with translators and copy editors that work with us to leave it as free as possible, not to put them in a corset of what could be sometimes a more clear language, a more standardized language, but we tend to constantly do the negotiation. We all within Arts of the Working Class tend to think in a too complex manner. That's not necessarily a virtue, but we celebrate it as such too. And we tend to also do a huge amount of effort to not to be caught within the academic vocabularies, try to escape it, but that doesn't mean we succeed all the time, but it's we're consciously working against that. And we also publish simple language also in order to also compensate.
Thank you. In the back.
Yes, thank you for your talk. I was wondering if you know anything about the response of the people who are selling the newspaper. Like, if you know what they think about the Arts of the Working Class.
The question is now, what do you know about the response from the actual vendors, the sellers of Arts of the Working Class, how they feel about it, what they think about it?
There are many vendors that we don't know personally. The pickup of the paper is highly anonymous, so people come at 3 in the morning and pick stacks from the office where we have always stacks in front of our Schaufenster. There are many that also come and talk and have a coffee. There are many that also like to contribute it. That also meaning that it takes a different amount of time that when having contributors that are seeking and coming from a practice of writing, so it takes more time. We also get the feedback of people that like to tell us good and bad anecdotes of encounters with vendors. Some are unfortunate, some are uplifting, where vendors speak highly about the paper, but also allow people to also be surprised that this is not only about just selling something, but there are people that are engaged and are giving a summary of the issue every time.
Thank you.
I wonder how you curate the issue and how you choose the artists or the content of the specific paper.
The question now is how you curate each issue and decide upon the content, the artists, the contributors.
Thank you for the question. It's that's the fun part. That's the Sahnestück, because we try to give an overarching topic to the year and see what are urgencies, and we try to foresee how urgencies can be treated within our capacities, and we try to see who are the artists working around this. We also seek for media partnerships that allow us to work with specific artists. For example, the paintings from the exhibition at the Kunstmuseum Stuttgart, we have the rights, otherwise we could have to pay for them. So that's an advantage that we use so we can enjoy these paintings. Or, for example, in the case of the issue that I present to you, Weapons of Choice, Jonatas Andrade and another artist that I unjustly didn't mention, Barbara Kruger, feminist icon, was only possible to talk, both of them highly successful artists, through the to the support of the galleries that made the labor possible. So it's always like a balance between things that we don't decide rationally, but more like intuitively and out of really passion or interest through the works of artists that we like. But everyone is, of course, sorry, I have to mention that also artists and everyone can also send their works, and basically we also start a conversation, which takes sometimes a bit longer because we need to understand who is this person, interest, and why, work together, but it tends to be also a very rewarding and nice way of connecting. Thank you.
Another question from you guys. Otherwise, we come to an end. I have one short question for my final question, because you mentioned it briefly. Is everything that is in the newspaper also reflected on the online presence, or is there more content in the print issue? Like, what's the relationship between the print and the digital, offline, the online
Yes,
newspaper?
great question. Online, we try to have a mix of two things, and that is media partnerships, where we do a more traditional, like art reviews and interviews, to things that do not fit to the issues, whether out of reason of timing or topics. And on the others, we try to periodically also upload translations of the articles that are maybe in Turkish in the issue, are uploaded in English to the website.
Sweet. Then I come to my final question. It's always the same one, and that would be: do you have a final piece of advice that you want to share with us here? Entering the precarious and highly contradictory art system, what's a good advice you can share?
Yeah, work with us. And besides, I guess basically also keep on looking outside the academic realm was what is most important for people, and that will definitely allow you to balance your own priorities. Yeah. It's also very vague, but you surprised me with that one.
Yeah.
So
but there's a very open invitation to work with art of the working class. So thank you so much, María-Inés, to be here. Thank you guys for being here. So warm applause.
Thank you. Thank you.
To our speaker. And warm applause to you yourself. This is the last session for 2023, so I see you guys next year. I wish you wonderful final days here in December. Stay well, stay healthy, and see you soon.
Yes.
Thank you, María-Inés.
Vielen Dank, Lukas.
Vielen Dank, vielen Dank.